Good morning. I'm Brian Carroll, equipping pastor at Cypress Bible Church, and I'd just like to welcome you to this workshop. It's a workshop on how to connect, and specifically we're using the Zoom platform to really talk about how we can connect in this kind of environment that we're currently in, as we need to social distance, can't gather in groups together. So how do we as a church connect with each other, communicate, and support each other? I'm struck by a verse in Hebrews 10:24 and 25, which says, "And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." And so in order for us to really have that kind of impact in each other's lives, we have to find creative ways to do that. We can phone call, we can FaceTime, but the value of this particular process is that we can meet together as a group, in a smaller group, or you can even do a little bit of a larger group. And so we want to give you some of the nuts and bolts of how to accomplish that, but also to give you a bigger picture of why this can be used in a valuable way. So there is a deeper sense of connection when you can actually see somebody, greet your friends, they interact, you see their facial nod. That's a whole lot different than when you're speaking to somebody on the phone. And I know some phones have the technology of video technology, and that's great, but again, this is the easiest way to connect a larger group of people together, small groups, Bible study groups, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of application for that. There is also a real added benefit. Sometimes if you're a leader of something, or you want to gather a group of people together, it's difficult to do that on the mediums that we have, and so this kind of transcends that. So a small group can meet together, and it's not just the leader interacting individually with each other, which happens over emails or phone calls. This becomes the group can interact and interface with each other at the same time. One of the other things is it's hard to know what the ramifications is going to be of the COVID-19 dilemma. Will people return back to things at the same pace that they were going before, or will there be a slow entrance back into that? We believe this medium can be a way to include people who can't be present. And so you can still, when church starts to resume, groups start to resume, start meeting together using some sort of a computer or a phone or something. You can begin to allow other people to participate in that conversation discussion, even though they're not present in the room. And so we believe that even though this technology, a lot of us are embracing it because of a difficult time, we believe it has a lot of really positive ramifications for the future. And then the other thing is it gives opportunity for training. You can do live training and people can watch in at the same time while it's happening. They can send in comments, emails, and texts. And so you can interact with the questions that are happening as well. And so training doesn't, again, have to happen with just those who are in the room. One of the other features that we've seen, some of our small groups are including their missionaries who live on the other side of the world, people that they interact with and support in a way, but to have them physically present, interactive, see their homes, that sort of thing, is just really transforming relationships and how that impact can happen in a long-term way. And so talked a lot about that in the ministry setting, but there's also the value of once you learn how to use this tool, which is a free tool, you can pay for an upgrade, and we'll explain that a little bit later, but it is a free tool, but you can actually connect to your family members or friends all over the world in that sort of way too, and bring them into the same place in a way that most of us weren't doing before. This technology has existed for a while, but many of us were using it only in a business setting. And now it's being transformed to be used in all kinds of ministry settings and in social settings and family settings. So I think there's great value in that. Beth, let me start with you. You've used it quite a bit for meetings. Can you just tell what the impact of using this particular platform, Zoom, how that has enhanced meetings and interaction?
Well, I think it's been pretty amazing. I've used it for our small group. Brian and I happen to be in the same small group, and I think that has been a wonderful thing. And it's like, everybody's attending because we can all, like at 6 o'clock, 6:30, say, okay, we're having small group now. That has been great to be able to see everyone's faces and just to interact and react to each other. I think it's been a wonderful tool. I've used it in business setting also for our staff meetings, and it has been very, very helpful. I come out of there with more on my to-do list than I started, which at this time I like, because I do not like to sit idle, as those who know me personally. I've also been able to use it a week ago. Susan Salinas and I had the privilege of doing the lesson for the Kids Life recording that they do every Saturday. And we got to teach the Bible through a Zoom, and that was awesome. And I think Wayne's going to touch on this a little bit more, but my children don't live in town anymore. And so we've actually I called it a Gonzalez family meeting, but Wayne's has picked up on this too. So it's just been wonderful.
Yeah, Beth, every Saturday morning since returning from out of the country a little over 3 weeks ago, we have a coned Zoom meeting, and it's been great because when Debbie and I from returned to the States from being overseas for almost 3.5 weeks, we had such a longing to see our kids. And doggone it, we got caught up in the virus coming through a country that was put on a restricted list. So we were automatically quarantined for 2 weeks. And we had planned on anyway, but Zoom became a means for us to connect with our families. And I remember that very first time that we Zoomed on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, and I'm even getting a little emotional right now. I literally just started crying seeing their faces. It was just so neat, not only to hear their voices and or read their words through text, but to see their faces. It was just great. And then just even last night, you made the reference, Brian. Last night, Debbie and I, or yesterday afternoon at 2 o'clock our time, 10 o'clock Israeli time, Debbie and I Zoomed with our Israeli friend and wished them a happy Passover because they had just met as a family by Zoom of different locations in Israel. So Joel, Gail, his wife Gail, and Debbie and I toasted our friendship and wished them a happy Passover last night. It was just awesome. Debbie got off the Zoom, and just sent them a text through WhatsApp and said, "You made our days by inviting us into your home on the most memorable time of your Jewish life." So it was great.
That is awesome. That is awesome, Wayne. And Beth, thank you for sharing those impact. I'm going to share a screen with you, and you're going to be able to see some information here. This is one of the features of Zoom, is that we can share a screen, and by sharing a screen, we can look at some other pieces and bring information into that, videos, pictures. This actually is our small group. Beth said she was part of that small group as well. You can see our group right there, and we are meeting together. We call it the Brady Bunch Square. We have 9 squares there, but it's a great way that we can interact with each other, and we have enjoyed doing that, and as Beth had mentioned as well. I'm going to walk through just some nuts and bolts. So if you've never had exposure to this particular platform, we're going to show you how to go about doing that and how you can set up a meeting and those sorts of things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to a website to show you how you can share a screen again, but this time it's going to be a different one. We're going to go to a Zoom website that you can actually, let me see here. All right, I think this is, no, that's not the right one. Here we go. I think it's this one. Here, let me go here. Yes, here it is. So this is the Zoom website. So if you're interested in learning more about Zoom, you can do it free. You can experiment around with it and see if it's a good app for you. You will go to, you'll see the web address right up here. It's pretty easy. It's just zoom.us. So www.zoom.us. And it'll take you to the screen that looks like this. And if you were to come here, you'll want to sign up. It's free, so you would just click there. This is if you don't already have an account. And then you'll see, whoops, actually it's going to my own existing account. If you were just to sign up, it's free. It'll ask you for some identifying information. Mine popped up there because I already have created an account on here. But if you did that, you would just enter your birth date and a little bit of information about your ID and your password. It's not a lot of disclosed information, just a few things. And then they'll send you an email that, as you do on most sites, that you have to verify that indeed you are the person submitting that, so someone can't do it under your name. And you verify that, and once you do that, you'll open up into a screen that looks a little bit like this. You'll see on the left-hand side, there's a variety of things. The profile is just the information about you. And once you join Zoom, you'll get your own personal meeting ID. That's an ID that's connected and associated with you. Anytime you want to host a meeting, you would send someone that ID plus then a password to come in, or you'll see right here is a link. This link is a link that gets access to you, and you can send that to people privately when you want them to join you in a meeting. You'll see the sign-in email there, user type. This one here that you're looking at is a basic one. A basic one means that your time is limited. And now I'm going to click on what the difference between the basic and the upgrade is here. Whoops, no, I shouldn't have done that. That says I want to update. upgrade. Well, yeah, it shows the information there. It says you're currently on a basic plan free. Basic plan never expires. You can host an unlimited number of meetings, only one meeting at a time. No time limit for one-on-one meetings, but there is a 40-minute time limit on meetings with 3 to 100 people. And that's the particular biggest difference is between a basic and a paid plan. A basic is your meetings are limited to 40 minutes. If you do a paid plan right now, those are $14.99 plus tax, and so that's about $15 a month. But again, if you're just doing a brief meetings, then 15 minutes. The other great thing is that if you're invited into a meeting, it's the host that determines the length of the time on that. So if someone else invites you to come join a Zoom meeting, it's not going to cost you anything. And if they have paid the plan, then you can be on that for longer than the 40 minutes. But if they only have a 40-minute, it'll limit you to that. And so then I'm going to go back over here to the profile again, back to the profile where we were. This is my profile. And then if you were to set up a meeting with people, this is the place that you would go. And the great thing they've set up about Zoom is you have a test meeting. It's not an actual meeting. You're not going to invite people there. You get to set that up. You get to look at all the behind the scenes stuff. So that's a helpful thing. But I'm going to show you if you actually, once you're past that, if you set up an actual meeting. So you click on this meetings button. And then you'll see you'll schedule a new meeting. So let's say we're going to schedule a meeting. I'll do that right now. So I click the schedule a meeting, and then you would choose the topic. So I'll just say small group. Oops, I wish I could spell a little better there. Small group. And then you can determine if you want to put an optional description in there, but the meeting will pop up. Whatever you put as the topic, that's what's going to pop up there. And then you put the when, so I'm just going to put this out. I'm going to come back and cancel this later, but just we'll just say on Sunday the 19th, and we're going to meet at, let's just say at 3:00 p.m. And then I can say the amount of time I want for that meeting. Let's just say I'm going to say we're going to do 2 hours. If you are limited to the 40 minutes, then of course your time limit will be limited as well. But it says 40-minute plan. There you can see it. So I'm going to switch that. So because this is my free account, so I'm going to go back and it's really I'll go with the maximum because otherwise I'll have to upgrade. But allows us in increments. I'll go ahead and put 45 minutes, knowing that I'll have to be out at 40 minutes. It'll cancel my meeting or shut it down at that time. A recurring meeting is something you will check if you're going to have the same meeting all the time. The great thing about that is you're going to send out information to people about when a meeting is occurring. And they have to have a link to come into that. And if it's a recurring meeting, they use the same link all the time. If you set up a meeting, like if our group was going to meet every Sunday, but then I only set it up each week the night before, then I'm going to have to send them a new entrance link. But the great thing is once you set that up as a recurring meeting, they use one link to get in all the time. All meetings then will have a personal meeting ID. That's my ID. And then the password, they set that for you. It comes in, and that the password, I'll explain that in a minute here, the value of that. And then on here, you have the option. Do you want everyone, you want the host, that would be me, to have the video on? Yes. Do you want the participants to have the video on? I'm clicking yes. If you click off, then they can be present on there, but they are not, you can't see them, and you can turn off your own video. Then it would be just a phone conversation online. So we think the video is probably one of the beneficial elements that you'd want to include. And then you'll see here we're audio. Do you want to have telephone and computer audio? The system is set up so that people can call in via a phone, any phone, and there's numbers to do that. If you're wanting the video conferencing sort of thing, then of course you would stick to computer audio. I put both on there because sometimes if someone's not accessible to a computer and they still want to participate, they can call in via a telephone. Down below, you'll see there's some meeting options. I suggest, and it is a default right now on Zoom, is that you always enable the waiting room. And what that means is when someone comes, it's sort of like they knock on the door and you say, come on in, you'll see their name pop up on the screen, but you give them access to it. This was a security measure that was developed by Zoom because people were just infiltrating and coming into meetings that were publicly announced. Like if you put your Zoom link out for, let's say, a prayer meeting at church, and you put that out for everyone to see, then what could happen is anybody can come into that meeting, and that actually happened to a church, and some people showed some inappropriate material. So enabling a waiting room gives you access to approve people coming in or not, and so you know who you've invited, and then you can invite those people in. And then the next thing is record the meeting automatically on the local computer. Zoom gives you the ability to record things. Now, I am a very strong believer, and I believe our Texas laws kind of indicate this as well. You really can't record something without the permission of the people. So today, before recording, I've gotten the permission of Wayne and Beth that they're part of this meeting and we're recording it. So I don't ever record it automatically unless you've predetermined that all of our meetings are going to be recorded. And then I'll show you later where those recordings are at. And so then once you do that, then you would save the meeting. And so I'm going to go ahead and save that meeting. And then I'm going to go back up. And so that all those details that I just checked are right there. Now, if you go back over here, I guess, go back over here to the, to the other tabs over here. That's the meetings. Now you'll see if I click on this meetings tab, it shows I have a meeting coming up. So when I get ready to go, I can click on this to see how that meeting is set up, to see if, and then I can always make changes in it if I need to make changes, or I'm going to go back to the meeting tab again. Or the other thing is that when it's time to start a meeting, as the host, I can go ahead and click start, and that will start that meeting. And we encourage hosts always to come about 15 minutes beforehand. And then as you're sending out invitations for people, to recommend they come about 15 minutes early, because sometimes the first time takes a little bit to get through what you need to do. For a recipient, when you invite them, if they click the link, then they will go to Zoom's website, and then it'll ask them, are you willing to allow Zoom to come onto your computer? You have to say yes. And then it'll also ask you whether you're agreeing to allow the video portion and the audio portion. And of course, you affirm all those things to come into the room. And so you want to instruct the people who are coming to a meeting for the first time who've not used Zoom. Really, the answer is to say yes to all those things. And all it is doing is saying that your camera's going to film you, your audio is going to film you, and that you're giving permission for their program to be operating on your computer. And those are necessary in order for it to work. And so then, as I mentioned, then this shows the meetings, and then if you want to schedule a new meeting, you would do that. Going back over here to this other side then, webinars are really for those who are paying for, it's an additional feature, you have to pay extras for that, so I'm not going to talk about that. But then down here, you click on the recordings. If you record a meeting, and we're recording this one right now, that you have two options. You can either record it to your computer itself, or you can record it to the cloud, which Zoom manages. And so you'll have that choice when you hit a recording. But once you do a recording, and I haven't done any recording on this particular account, all the lists of the recordings will show up on this screen, so you will see them. And so if you want to go back to see something. At Cypress Bible Church, we're recording devotionals, we're recording trainings, and recording a variety of other things. And so I have a list of those in my other setting, which you can't see because we're operating under that one right now. But those recordings are accessible and you can pull them up at any time. The great thing about that is you can download it to your own computer. You can send someone else a link to watch them. You can post them online because those recordings belong to you and you have the freedom to use them how you want. And so it's not something that Zoom controls. And then the next,
Brian,
yes, Wayne.
just bring out right there how the cloud recording is only available to those that have a paid subscription.
Okay,
so for people like me, I have the basic, the unpaid, and I can only record to my computer.
Okay, great. Great point to know. So then you do have to pay for the upgrade. And because I have the upgrade, I'm not sure of all the distinctives. So I appreciate that, Wayne. And so if you do have a recording and an unpaid, it'll go just to you'll have to manage that on your own computer. Next thing I'm going to go to, or anything else about setting up a meeting, either Beth or Wayne, anything else either of you would want to say? Okay. All right. I'm going to go on to settings then. On the settings tab, you'll see this is where you're really going to schedule the details of the meeting. This that you'll see at the beginning, start meeting with host video on. And so if you want them to see you right away, you turn that on. Participants video, whether you want that on or off. Again, I think the main primary value of this is the videos on. And some of these are default settings, and so those automatically happen. If for some reason you want to have a meeting and not be able to see anyone, you can turn that part off. Next thing, you'll see audio type, telephone and computer audio. We saw that defaulted on the other one. And that's so this you're setting up what the defaults are going to do. Defaults join before host. I don't think that's a wise idea. Generally, if you're going to be in charge of that meeting, it would be better for you to be there beforehand. But there might be some extenuating circumstances where it didn't matter if the host was there on time, or if maybe you set up the meeting and you're going to be late, then others could join before you got there. Personal meeting ID when scheduling a meeting, that would mean it requires people to put your personal meeting ID in there. I don't include that because the actual link you're going to send to people is already including that. It embeds it in there, and so there's no reason to have to do that separately. And then the same thing is that you don't have to use that as well because it's all embedded in the particular link. Only authenticated users can join meetings from web clients. The participants need to authenticate prior to joining meetings from the web client. And so that's turned on so that they have to indicate who they are when they come in. We believe that's a valuable thing and a default setting that's recently come with Zoom. Require a password when scheduling new meetings. The password, as I mentioned, is included in the link, and so we do include that. It's an extra set of security. Require a password for instant meetings. If I'm setting up a meeting, which I can schedule a meeting immediately, that would be, I would click on this host a meeting up here with video on, and then I can send an invitation for someone to join me. That we would require still a password for that. They need to come in, and again, a link helps. Again, all those things are embedded in the link, so it's not like they have to type that in every time. And so all meetings use personal meeting ID, and then here's the one, embed password and meeting link for one-click join. And so that is the way that they can do it, is by clicking the link. Down below, require a password for participants joining by phone. This is a little bit different. If they are not able to follow the link because they don't have a smartphone and they're dialing a number, then they will have to enter the password because that is a different medium. If they have a smartphone and click on the link, they can join in the same way that you would on a tablet or a computer. These are other things that you can do. Mute participants upon entry. If you don't want anyone to talk until you want them to talk, you can do that. I usually leave that open so we can greet each other, but that's really up to you. And then there's a variety of other things. I'm not going to go on all of these. Chat, skip down here to chat. Chat is a place, and we're going to show you where that's at on your screen in a few minutes, but that's really where you get to send a message to someone. It's a written message, and you can set it up a couple ways. A private chat says you allow meeting participants to send a private one-to-one message to another participant. I tend to, in groups, tend to lean against that, but you can choose how you want to do that. I tend to, if we're doing a group meeting, I like to make that as a group, so I would turn that one off. You click on it to turn it off. But if you want to leave private chat open so that, like in our meeting, Wayne could interact with Beth, or Beth could interact with Wayne, there might be some value in your meeting for that. But I like it if we're going to chat, that we're all chatting together. Auto saving chats. That means that if you have a chat and you want to save it to see it later, you turn that on. I'm not doing that, but again, I would tell people if I was doing that because I want them to know that their chat is being taped and or recorded, and they would know that. Then you can play a sound when participants join or leave. It's a little bell chime like a doorbell, and that would tell when they're coming in or out. And then file transfer, hosts and participants can send files to the in-meeting chat so that you could attach a file and send it through that as well. So I know this is last things, feedback to Zoom. If you want to give them feedback afterwards, if you want to do a survey, all those sorts of things are options you can do as well. So I know that's a lot of information there. And again, it's just settings, and you can kind of play around with those. A lot of other things here. I'm going to move to one other one. There's breakout rooms for those of you, and that's probably a little bit more advanced thing. If you want to break up into smaller rooms, let's say you have a large group meeting and then you break up into a prayer time, one group in one room, one in another. Breakout rooms are how you can do that. You do have to have a paid subscription to be able to do that. And so that gives you another option. Lots of different choices here. Again, you can explore around with those and look at those as you go. The waiting room is turned on, as we mentioned. Attendees join before meeting for host. Again, we've talked about a lot of those things. And I think there's one other thing here. Missed it somewhere along the way. That actually allows you, there is a way that if you're deciding that you want to do a mutual leadership, that you can share your hosting with somebody else. And so they can actually operate as a host as well in the same way and take initiative and control of a few things on the screen while you are working together. So anyway, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to let you can look through those things. It's lots of settings, but that's if you don't like the way something's set up, that settings is what you would go to do that. I'm going to go back to our initial meeting. And so this is the meeting that I had scheduled. And so you'll see this is I'm going to click on the small group setting, and I would send out then, if I'm going to tell my group we're going to have a meeting on Sunday, you'll see right over here, you can either see the URL here or you copy the invitation. Now you can see everything. This gives you opportunity to send this to people. You can send them meeting information, the ID and the password, and you can forward that to people and so that they can actually connect in with your group. And that's copying meeting invitation. It appears to me, yes, go ahead, Beth.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just to clarify on the chat, that is not you're talking, that is you are typing. So you're chatting by words so that you're not interrupting the speaker, but you can kind of have like a little side conversation. Oh, let's not forget to tell Brian that blah, blah, blah.
Right, yes, good point, Beth. It's all typed and you'll click, I'll show you where the chat button is in a few minutes, and you type that. The one thing you've got to remember is to hit the enter button for it to be on the screen. Some people were saying, I've typed it and I can't see my message, and it's because you need to hit enter. The one thing on the chat, you'll choose if depends on how the host has set it up, but if it's open that anybody can interact with anybody, then you choose who you're sending it to. If it's locked, then the only person you can send it to is to everyone or just specifically to the host. And so those are some things that you can see with that. Wayne or Beth, anything else about any of the part of either the, well, let me go back to this copy of the invitation. You copy the invitation, and as I said, then you would just copy this, and down here at the bottom, you'll see there's a place that says copy meeting invitation. It will copy it automatically. When you send an email to people, then you can email them. There are some more sophisticated things that you can actually populate people into your system and emails. I'm not going to go into that. It's a little bit more complicated than we have time for today. But just to know, that's the way that you send the link. And then this link here in the middle is what they will click on just in an email, and it automatically takes them to Zoom. If they've preloaded Zoom, then it's real easy. They just click to go into that meeting. If they've not preloaded Zoom, they've never been on a Zoom meeting before, then they will have to acknowledge a few things to get in there and to acknowledge that it's okay for the program to utilize their computer. Anything else, Wayne or Beth, that you would say about that?
Brian, I know you mentioned it before, but I would highly stress that if you've never used Zoom before and you're going to your first meeting, give yourself a good 15 or 20 minutes. My husband tried the other night, and it took him quite a while to get in. So, and I imagine part of it is also Zoom is probably very busy right now, but definitely give yourself, don't come in if your meeting's at 6, don't log in at 5:59 if you've never Zoomed before.
Right, and the same is true when you're hosting a meeting and you're telling people, come early, because sometimes it's hard to get in. So that's a good point.
And I would even highlight maybe first time or even second time, just get your spouse or a friend and just do a practice session between 1 or 2 people.
Yes, and actually they do have a little, they have now they've got a feature that you can do your own little test meeting, but it's not with anybody necessarily, but then they do encourage you to just invite a couple people to practice on that. People who are more forgiving than when you're trying to appeal to a larger group. And I did that with my own wife. We did a little inside our own house. If you do that, you got to get your computers far enough away or they give feedback. But we did that too. So I do encourage you to set up a meeting with forgiving people who will understand and learn together with you before you start hosting meetings for others. It's a helpful thing to do. So anything else, Wayne or Beth? Okay. If not, then I'm going to stop sharing this particular screen. And then I am going to get ready. Now, those are all things about setting up a meeting, accessing things, inviting people to a meeting. One of the things, if you're coming to a Zoom meeting and you've never come before, I want to show you kind of how the dashboard, I couldn't think of the word there, how the dashboard works at the bottom of the screen. And the best way to do that, I have a dashboard that's visible on my screen. Wayne and Beth do as well. Host has a few more things that are accessible to them because they're hosting the meeting and controlling some of the dynamics. But I'm going to have to share another screen with you because we're going to go to it's a PowerPoint because you can't see what I'm doing on my screen because that's only visible to me. And so I'm going to go to a PowerPoint slideshow that will actually take some pictures of what that would look like. And there's my small group that we talked about before. And then, all right, let me go here. And then let's see. All right, now, I know it's a strange picture of me, but I'm there for you. Don't look at me as much as look at the things at the bottom. You'll see at the very far left, there is a button which is called the mute button. The value of the mute button is you can mute so people can't hear background sound that's coming from you. Earlier, we were talking with Wayne and Beth before, I was talking with Wayne and Beth before we started, and his dog saw a dog outside or something happened outside and he started barking. So Wayne very quickly hit the mute button. Whenever you hit the mute button, a red line will go through that mute button. So the mute button helps kind of closed down so we can't hear background sound. That's really helpful for people to practice leaving the mute button on if you have background noises. It's interesting dynamic. Background noises oftentimes are much louder to the recipients who are on the other side of hearing it than you even perceive in your own house. And so just muting that helps, and then just remember to unmute when you're getting ready to speak. Next to that is a video button. I'm going to show you some of the features on these in just a minute. But if you want to turn the video off, you would the same thing. You would click on it. It'll stop the video right away. And then that will keep you from, if you have someone come into the room and you need to speak to them and you don't want anyone to pick up the conversation or see them, then you would click both of those red lines through both of those, which will stop showing the video and stop showing your voice going out, even though you can still hear the content of the meeting. Over here to the right-hand side, you'll see there's a security. There, Wayne just did that. He just went out and in. The security you'll see over here, the security is a button we're going to look at later. You can control a few of the things that are just an extra level of security in the room while you guys are having a conversation. Then manage participants, I'll look at that in a minute, but this is where you can see all the participants listed, who's in that meeting, and then you can turn their microphones off, you can turn their microphones on, you can empower somebody to be a host in your place. So there's a variety of things you can do in that. This is the button that we were, whoops, let me go back one. This was the button Beth was talking about here, the chat button. You click on that, then your chat screen will go to the right, and then that's where you'll type in text and you can see texts that are being sent back and forth between people. Share screen is what I'm doing now. That gives me the power to put up a different medium, whether that's a movie, whether that's an online document, whether that's something on my computer. In order to use this, you have to have that document preloaded on your computer and accessible so that you can quickly click on that to share that screen with others. The record button, which we talked about earlier, this helps you to record. You need to click this button to record, and you have two options. You can either record onto your computer, which is, I guess, what you have to do, according to Wayne, if you have an unpaid subscription. If you have a paid subscription, then you can either record to your computer or you can record to the cloud. And then this last button here is a reactions button, and that's a button that allows you to put up a hand clap or a thumbs up just to give feedback to the speaker who's speaking. And so and Wayne is doing that, at least on my screen right now as well. I'm going to kind of walk through a little more detail on these so you can see them. You'll see is the mute button is now muted with the red line through that. If you want to stop the video, you do the same. Here is when you first come online, sometimes new people at Zoom are having a hard time getting their whole system to work. And so there's a button right there called Test Speaker and Microphone. Recommend that for the first couple times you're on, you test the microphone. What it'll do is the test speaker is the first thing it'll do, it'll give you a beep. And if you can hear it, you say yes. And then it'll ask you to say something and it'll repeat it back to you. And it's telling you two things. You can hear and other people can hear you. And so that's a great thing to test when you're new to Zoom. And there's some other things there that talk about the speaker system. It's defaulting to what's in my computer. If you're having a different microphone, then you can activate that. A few other higher level things that you can look at if you want to. The next thing is on here is the stop on the video. Is if you click this right here, you'll see that you can select a camera. Mine's the automatic one. If you had a separate camera set up, you could choose that. Also, you can choose your video settings and you can choose a virtual background. So Wayne and Beth, can you switch and change us to a new virtual background? The background is kind of a fun thing in that you can go to all kinds of different places. You can do none, which is then it'll film what's behind you. You can go to San Francisco. You can go to Hawaii. You can go to the outer atmosphere of the universe. And then you can also add, you'll see this little button here. You can add your own virtual background. If there's a place that you want to add to that, you can. And then mirror your image is going to be, it's going to give what you see. Oh, there's Wayne. He's kind of got a strange out of space sort of thing. Now, the value of some of these sometimes is that it kind of distorts a little bit. And so you got to kind of watch what's the best background for you to be sitting in to be best use those. But again, those are just some fun things to make it more interesting. Security, mentioned that before. If it is checked, that means it's in operation. So once your meeting starts and if everybody's present, you can go ahead and click lock the meeting. The one thing I will tell you though, is if you lock the meeting and someone gets bumped out just because there's a internet kind of glitch or whatever, it's hard for them to get back in. So lock the meeting only if you're pretty sure everyone's present and you're pretty sure your bandwidth is operating well. We've had lots of experiences on meetings where people have gotten blocked out because high bandwidth use in their area. So just be aware of that. The check there, enable the waiting room. That means when people are coming in, they have to be approved to come in. Allow participants to share screens. So right now, anybody, Wayne or Beth, could share the screen as well when I'm not sharing it. If you don't want people to be able to do that, you click that. Now people can chat, so we're going to look at, and we'll do chatting in a little bit and let you see a little of that. If I didn't want them to chat, then I would uncheck that. This gives now people permission to rename themselves. That means they can change their name to something funny or humorous or whatever they want to call themselves. If you would prefer that not to happen, then you would uncheck that as well. Next thing, you'll see the manage participants. This is what it looks like over on the right hand side. I took this picture before Wayne and Beth were with me, but now if I pulled up mine, which you can't see, it would list all their names, and you'll see at the time I had my microphone was muted. I could close out my camera. I can do that to them as well. I control that. And then there's buttons at the bottom that I can mute everybody. I can disconnect everyone's camera. I can do that if there is a particular reason why I would want to do that. Let me see what else we have here. That's the chat box, and the chat box Zoom group chat at the bottom, and a place for you to type into there as well. And we already talked a little bit about that. And then the last thing you'll see, there's the record button, opportunity to record as we mentioned already. And then finally over here, you'll see reactions. And that's reactions is where you can either do the hand clap or the thumbs up to when people are speaking, so that you're giving them some feedback and encouraging feedback about what they're doing. So I think then I am at the end of that particular slideshow. Now I know that was an immense amount of information. Beth, it looks like you've gone to Hawaii. Wayne, you were out in outer space a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Any feedback, just nuts and bolts that I haven't said that you guys think would be helpful information for people to know?
Let me just highlight a couple of things. I don't know about the pro account, the pay account, but as a participant right now, Brian, I cannot see the security button that you were referring to. I don't know if that's because I'm on the basic account or if it's because I'm a participant and not a host.
Right, the host controls the security. Beth's nodding her head. So yeah,
Okay.
The host has full control. And if I had chosen to make somebody else a host, which I can do that, so I'll be interesting right now. So I'm going to make, Wayne, I'm going to make you a co-host right now. And let me just see if that security button pops up there. Does it pop up now for you?
Yes, it does.
All right, and so I've made Wayne a co-host, and I'm going to withdraw co-host permission now, so he.
Brian, you know me too well. I was thinking, what can I do right now to bring some excitement?
So one of the things that is of value, if you're the primary presenter and you want someone else to monitor things, then it is a great idea to actually, and it looks like we lost Beth both ways, both audio and visual there. Hopefully she'll be coming back with us in a minute. If you want to have someone else more monitor those things for you, then you can give them that hosting privilege and they can take care of that. I was at a meeting last night that did that. There was some background noise and that person can go and mute that person's. And so it wasn't the person speaking, because you want to focus on what you're communicating, not necessarily all the nuts and bolts. So if you have a larger group meeting, it's helpful to have someone who's kind of managing the meeting and someone who's actually doing the presenting, if that's what's going on there. So.
And another comment, I don't know about you guys, and it may be a setting and I've never changed it. My taskbar, which I have at the bottom of the screen, tends to go to sleep. And the way you wake it up is just move your cursor around your mouse and it wakes it up. So if you're looking and saying, I don't have all those buttons, it's because your taskbar has gone to sleep. So just move your mouse around and it will wake it up. Second thing, on the mute button, because we do this in our small group on Sunday night, and we have a lot of background noise that's mainly somebody who will remain anonymous starts cutting up. So we use a lot the space bar. If you put your cursor on the mute and just use your space bar, you will see and I can unmute like a walkie-talkie, just using my space bar going back and forth. And if you could put your cursor on the stop video, you can also do the same back and forth using your space bar. All right. I'm maneuvering those two, but the mute is the most important because as you're coming into meetings, as background noise does happen, and we all who have done these Zoom meetings know that background noise really robs a lot from the meeting. So I would affirm what you said, Brian. Do mute yourself if you're not talking.
Yeah. Beth, anything else that you would add to any of that?
A couple of things that I've discovered is if you go on your go down to the bottom and you see the thing that says the video settings. If you go in there, there is one that says enhance my view. So that makes you look better because sometimes we can be, well, it only can do so much. But if let's say you're in a darker room or like, I mean, we're all in different rooms right now and Brian has some good lighting, Wayne is good, I'm a little darker, but this seems to help with that too. Because if you, for that picture you showed from my house, it had gotten darker in the evening. So, and we didn't have as much lamps on as we should have. And that can sometimes just be, you know, aesthetically more pleasing. Play around with some of this stuff as I've been using it more. I've just kind of been, don't be afraid to click on a button. I mean, you're not going to do anything terribly wrong unless you take yourself out like I just did. But other than that, I mean, it can be fun. I have the virtual background on the beach, but when you go to set that, there's a thing that says about a green screen. I do not have a green screen, so click that off, and that kind of helps with like what happened with Wayne, how we kind of lost him in the back.
Yep, great points, Beth. Anything else either of you would say just about any of those settings? And again, I think what Beth said is great, is mess around with them. You can do that all on your own. You can set up your own meeting and nobody can even be present, and you can make all those adjustments and see what happens, and so you feel good about it. So,
you know, one of the things that I would suggest, be cognizant of your environment. Like we were on a call the other morning and there were two people who had an open window in the background. And so their face was very dark, but the background was like looking into a flashlight staring into your eyes. So play around with your screens as you're setting up your Zoom meeting. The best background is really either do a virtual background as Beth has, or something in the background where there's not light. You'll notice at the top of my door, I have the overhead light on and it's reflecting. And so just picture that whole door. If that was an outside window, it would become hurtful probably to your eyes. Brian's background with the banner back there, that looks great. And Brian, as Beth said, your lighting in your room is very good for this. So just be careful about the lighting background when you're setting up a Zoom call.
yeah, and I agree with that. And especially if you have your own Zoom account, you can kind of look at that. I've figured out some places that are better and some that aren't so good at my own home. And I was filming a video actually for the devotional and was doing it outside and realized that the sun was so intense that I had to move around until I found a place that it wasn't. So I do think background is important because, and then you can see your own background and you can make adjustments right on the spot, even if that's turning your camera. The one issue that I have the most is that because I wear glasses is the computer wants to reflect off the glasses. And so you got to figure out how to do that. And sometimes right now I'm facing where light is coming in. So all of that is light. So it's not just the computer screen that reflects. And so, yeah, you do need to figure that out, but that's a great point as well. Yeah, Beth.
One of the other things I think is a great point when you're hosting a meeting and you need to share screens, as you said, Brian, prepare like you're going to any sort of meeting so that you have all of that already saved on your computer, and it helps you and it helps the participants also. I think we're all getting used to this new platform, but I think it's a very useful platform that we can use even as we go forward. I know the other night we had our finance committee meeting, and it was so helpful because we could see all the documents together. We could talk about each individually, and we all were there. I think that's the thing is you can set up a meeting where you don't have to leave your house much easier sometimes than if you have to keep running back and forth. So I think this is going to be a useful tool. This is not going to go away even when I think we can get to congregate together again.
Yeah, I just realized, you know, for me, recently we moved and I'm 25 minutes away from church. And so if I come for an evening meeting, that's 50 minutes. And so it does make me wonder whether we could better utilize that to allow people more time at home and still have face-to-face connection, interaction. We can still put up screens so that we can see agendas or documents that we need to share and those sorts of things. So I do think it will make a difference in that regard too. So I think that's a great point for that. Anything else that you feel like is important with meetings or that sort of thing? Okay. A couple things. Go ahead.
One more. I did go out, Brian, I'm sorry. I did go out and read on some of the Zoom lessons, I guess you call them, that they have, training sessions. They're excellent. And they answer a lot of questions and they give a lot of tips. So I highly recommend, if you're going to be doing several meetings, or especially if you're hosting a meeting, go out there and read it. It really helped me learn some of this stuff. I know Wayne, Brian, and I have been talking back and forth, trying to figure out, how we can do each one of these the best that we can.
Absolutely. And I would say, that is just zoom.us, and go there, man, video tutorials on just about any topic question you would have.
And the other thing that I think is valuable, whether you're watching something on Zoom or whether you're watching this video, if you can do that like on a phone or some other medium and then have the Zoom account open up, you can do both at the same time. It's a better tutorial because you can kind of experiment, pause the video that you're watching so that you can interact with it directly. Again, we all learn better with hands-on. It's hard to watch a whole video all the way through and be able to do everything, so it's better to kind of have your own experimentation with that. So I would agree with that. A couple of other things that I would just say for meetings of sorts. One of the things is that Wayne has already said, look at your environment. You make sure that the environment is best to portray and not distracting from what you're doing. Moving things in the background, other than that's palm trees right there, but moving things in the background with people and that sort of thing are a little bit of a distraction. That's an ongoing thing, but if someone walks back and forth, we're all drawn to that and stop listening. And so try to minimize what's going to happen behind you. The other thing is to be early. As the leader, be early, be there, greet people as they come, interact with them. That just gives people respect and engages them. I also think it's helpful in a meeting, especially when you get to be several people, that every time someone makes a comment, to acknowledge that comment. Thanks for that feedback, I appreciate that, and draw some attention to that. That reinforces people's participation. I was on a meeting last night that actually had a large number of people, so they chose to use the chat room as a place of communication rather than speaking. And so every time something was said, that people would draw attention to that, thanks that. And sometimes there was so much coming in, they couldn't. They said thank you to all the men that are doing that. It was a men's meeting. And then they drew attention to a few of the other things. So I think the more to affirm people, because some people it's a little hesitant for them to want to engage and disclose. So that's the one thing. The other thing is that I think don't be afraid to call on people gently, to say, Beth, do you have anything to say? I called on Wayne. Wayne, Beth, do you have anything to say? And then the other part is when somebody speaks, don't feel like you as a speaker have to be always the one to respond. So like if Beth said something in our small group, and I might say to the rest of the small group, hey guys, do you have anything you would want to say back to Beth? Do you have any questions? Do you have any thoughts on what she was saying? And so part of what we want to do is encourage the interaction among each other and not just one directional. And part of including Beth and Wayne was just so that we could have some interaction today on here rather than it just me speaking to a screen. And so make sure that and then instruct people. I think when you have a larger group and somebody wants to speak, it's not always clear. So raise a hand if that means somebody wants to speak. And then I oftentimes in larger groups will ask questions and I ask, does that make sense? And give a thumbs up, and then they do. So you don't have to wait for everybody to kind of check in on that. So ask questions that people can respond with a physical gesture, guide them in that. So give some instructions on that. And then the other thing I think is helpful in most meetings is to kind of give an agenda. What are we going to cover today so that people know how to expect that? Sometimes you can still send that out via email or another way when you send out meeting notes, but it's helpful for people to know what to expect as well. And then again, more than anything, expectation. Any other kind of values? I know, Wayne, you had talked about the importance of creating safe environments so people feel free to share, ways that people can feel engaged and encouraged to engage and respect. Anything you would add to any of those 3 points of safety?
Yeah, Brian, let me just put this up real quick, okay? I think this is what Brian is talking about. When you look at these three areas, whether it's online or in a classroom setting or in a living room setting, how can you promote safety? How can you promote engagement? And how can you affirm respect? And there's just 3 questions under each of those to maybe highlight that. But think in terms, as the host of a meeting, man, I want to feel safe. I want to be engaged. I don't want this to be a passive exercise for everybody. And also, I want people to feel respected, especially when you're in a dialogue on a topic when there very possibly is disagreement or different perspectives. So how can not only you as a host model, but encourage all participants to reflect respect? So anyway, just thanks for letting me share that, Brian.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate it. Great slides. So appreciate that. I think that's really kind of concluded kind of the content of the meeting. Beth, anything else you would add to content-wise?
No, I don't think so. I just think that use it, enjoy it. None of us, at least I don't think any of us have stock in Zoom. This is just the platform that we're using right now. There are many others, but I'm kind of thinking right now, because I'm missing everyone so much, what a great way to reach out to, like you were saying, the missionaries, you know, if you have a personal relationship, but even old friends and family that you just don't see often. This is a very easy way for everyone to get together.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The one thing that actually I spoke to some other people about a variety of platforms, and there's a variety of others that you can use. But one of the things that most people have said, this is one of the most user-friendly for a person who's never used to enter into it. You can invite them. They don't even have to have a Zoom account necessarily to participate in meetings. And so that's all that's been encouraged. The one thing I would say, just go ahead, Wayne, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, you're probably going to read a lot about the security issues with Zoom right now. They are addressing it, but if you follow the settings that Brian highlighted, especially waiting room, controlling screen sharing, and be very cautious about how you distribute the invitation, it will not eliminate it, because I don't think we can eliminate it, but it will greatly minimize the possibility that you will have problems with security, people from the outside coming on and creating havoc with your meeting.
And the good thing about Zoom is that they actually send you all these updates all the time about what they're doing to change the security. So you know what they're doing. But yeah, and then they set it as default so that it's more secure as a default. You have to undo that if you're going to change something. So right now the default is you have to have a password to get in. The default is, but again, that's embedded in the invitation you send. The default is right now that people have to go through a waiting room. The default right now is that share screening is limited. And then with that extra security button at the bottom, you can control it in the minute. You can change it immediately. If people are sharing the screen and you don't want them to, you can turn it off immediately. So they are responding quickly to a lot of the ways. You know, people will always find ways to get around things and to make life difficult for others. I mean, there's just a group of people who will do that. And so they're meeting those needs as quick as they can. So, and sometimes the press oversays things to create fear and anxiety. So let's not buy into that either. So there's a balance there. Last thing I would like to say is that I really believe that this is a tremendous ministry tool that I was unaware of about a month ago. And I think it's a great opportunity. Whether you are a leader, it's a great way to get people together face to face and interact and encourage them in a bigger sense of community, not just you, the leader, interacting with them. I also believe that it really gives opportunity to minister to family in new ways and bring separated families together in a unique way, setting up a time. I think you had said that, Wayne, that your family tries to do that regularly now at the same time, whether it's once a week, once a month, whatever it is, but to set up a time that we know we're all going to come together. I think it brings a whole lot of convenience to a world that is so fast and busy. It gives us a way that we can interact and meet. Like, I've rarely been able to attend the men's meeting on Wednesday nights because of the time it takes me to get home and come back. I want to eat supper with my family. Last night I joined in because it was easy to do from my home without traveling back and forth. And so I think there's a variety of ways that this can be helpful and useful. But I would encourage anybody who's watching this training that you would consider, who would God have you impact? Who's somebody you can reach out to and encourage? Whether it's a one-to-one or one-to-two sort of thing, a small group, or whether it's leading something or inviting others to come in to pray or talk or share. I do think all meetings need to have, family meetings might be the exception. Connection is important, but I think all meetings need to really have a purpose and have a connection. Both of those are values to do, and to be clear about that and keep that. All meetings with no purpose, they sometimes will lose interest if it's optional. And then if it's just connecting, so you need to have a bit of a purpose. I think Bible study and prayer can help that. Or the other thing is if it's just a purpose, people don't feel connected, and that you said you could have just sent me as an email and a text and I could have seen all that. So trying to keep both of those engaged. So anything else? Beth, I saw you doing something. Anything else you want to say?
The only thing I would say is that, like any other meeting that you're scheduling, especially if it's, you know, a little bit more, is give a time frame. Yeah. Say, we'll be meeting from 7 to 8 p.m. Because I know with people with a lot of children or with their children at home now, and like the dad might need to go and do something at 8 o'clock, or you might, so I would try to keep it, you know, like if you need an hour and a half meeting or an hour meeting, that always helps when people are trying to schedule around for each one of them to be able to get on the computer and in Zoom.
You bet. You bet. All right. I appreciate you joining us. Thank you, Wayne and Beth. I appreciate you being part of this with me, and we just trust it'll be helpful to others. All right. Bye-bye, everybody.